Hi, I'm Mike Barsick, proud Decatur citizen, and today we're going to talk about waste management and particularly composting. Sometimes people ask me, well, what can I put in my compost and not put in my compost? And honestly, there's not a lot of hard and fast rules. We put lots of fruits and vegetable food scraps in. That's our primary thing that we're taking from our kitchen and put in. We'll sometimes put, say, maybe shrimp shells or maybe some fish skin, but generally we stay away from meat scraps. And I would say do not put in dog waste. That's probably not what you want to do anyway. But also, if you have old paper napkins or paper plates, if you shred them up, you can throw them in. And if you don't have enough brown leaves, maybe that time of the year there aren't any yet, you can always use shredded newspaper or other types of shredded paper. So lots of ways to get this right, really very few ways to get it wrong. There's a number of different tumblers out there, but it keeps all the stuff off the ground. It's self-contained, and there's we've never had a problem with any kind of critter since we started doing it. So I really am a big advocate of that. There's a number of manufacturers, but I really like this one. It's called Tumbleweed, and it's actually from Australia, crazy enough. But you can see that it's really large. It holds a lot of material in it, and if you reach in, you can see that my compost has lots and lots of worms in it, which are doing their job, and lots of other little microbes running around in it as well. So this is what we typically do, is just take the lid off and throw the food scraps in and shake it around a little bit. And then I have a rain barrel over here that I just usually rinse out this bucket with. And then generally, and I don't do it all the time, but I generally try to add some yard waste, periodically as well. You don't have to put it in every time you put the food in, but it's not a bad habit. And you can kind of just take regular leaves or grass clippings or whatever. If you're not in a hurry, you can just throw those in. If you want to speed things along, the key is to chop things up more. So that includes the food scraps. So if you use a giant rind of watermelon, it'll eventually compost. Time is on your side. But if you want it to happen faster, the smaller you chop things, the faster they'll compost. And so with leaves, I found that if you have a lawnmower and you run over them with your lawnmower, and then they're a lot smaller, that will really speed up the effort. And of course, the smaller it is, the faster it will essentially break down. And it's generally they say kind of a good mix of green and brown. I run into problems during times of the year I don't have enough yard waste of one type or the other. Usually it's leaves that I want to sort of hang on to, and sort of late summer the leaves haven't fallen yet, but I keep some I actually collect some that we rake up or neighbors rake up, and I keep them in a dry space so that I always have some brown. It just again accelerates the effort. You don't have to do this. You can just throw stuff in, and it just takes a little longer. Probably the biggest thing to keep it moving is to turn it. So turning it on a regular basis, again, is going to help mix it up, kind of mix the worms and the little microbes running around inside there. And this one's pretty easy, but you don't have to do this every day. I don't do it every day. I usually do it maybe 3 times around, just for good number. But it's just going to speed things up. If you don't do it, it sits there. It's still compost. That's the best part about it. I really like the design of this one because there's a bar that goes through the middle that, as I'm turning it, the stuff in the bottom hits that bar and breaks it apart, so it doesn't come down in one big clump, which is nice. When this batch is done, and that's another thing, is that the compost in the tumbler is a batch process. So that means that when this batch, or I guess I would say when the compost tumbler is reasonably full, I'm going to take I use this as a great little thing to catch it in, and I'm going to remove probably about 2/3 of it. you always want to leave some compost in it. I learned that because you want the worms to propagate. So I will take out some, and I'll usually just turn this, and this isn't necessarily ready, but it's actually not horrible. What I usually do is let this, I guess what I kind of time it out as we use a bucket, and it's got a lid on it, and we'll fill up the bucket with food scraps, and during the time period it takes to fill this up, which might be 2 weeks, say, or whatever it is, I'll keep turning this, and that will let this batch sort of, quote, finish off. And then when this bucket's full, that usually means this is pretty much ready. And again, ready is all relative. You can use it. So then I'll take it out here and I'll just dump some out like that. And there's some stuff in there that probably could go a little further. But then we'll take this and I'll spread this in our planters. This is really valuable stuff. It's the finished compost, or nearly finished compost, is great for nutrients for all your plants. And we like to grow a lot of tomatoes, and tomatoes will really deplete the soil, so this is just wonderful stuff for them. And I'll end on this quote that there's a famous architect named Bill McDonough, and he puts it really succinctly. He says, waste equals food. And I think that's one of the best ways to consider compost.